Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So for those who were here yesterday, we got to hear Yashoda Mai Mataji recapping the 18th chapter, the last chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. So that was very wonderful, and that means that whoever's been coming to these classes steadily has gone through the entire text. So we're starting tonight with the preface, and tomorrow with the introduction. So as she was saying, when I arrived late yesterday, aren't we lucky? We're so lucky that we have this Bhagavad-Gita as it is, that Srila Prabhupada has brought. So you can read along, and it's a little long for reading, so I may stop a little bit, comment in between. So Prabhupada's reading. Originally, I wrote Bhagavad-Gita as it is in the form in which it is presented now. When this book was first published, the original manuscript was, unfortunately, cut short to less than 400 pages, without illustrations and without explanations for most of the original verses of the Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. In all of my other books, Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Upanishad, etc., the system is that I give the original verse its English transliteration, word for word Sanskrit English equivalents, translations, and purports. This makes the book very authentic and scholarly, and makes the meaning self-evident. I was not very happy, therefore, when I had to minimize my original manuscript. But later on, when the demand for Bhagavad-Gita as it is considerably increased, I was requested by many scholars and devotees to present the book in its original form. Thus, the present attempt is to offer the original manuscript of this great book of knowledge with full parampara explanation in order to establish the Krishna consciousness movement more soundly and progressively. So, who can say why Prabhupada was disappointed with the first edition of the Bhagavad-Gita?
I actually started reading that edition.
How does that work? Is it on? Yeah, now it's on.
That was the edition that I started reading.
The little blue one?
The little one, I don't know what the cover was like. I found it in the local library. When I first went to the temple, I had a friend who's really straight Mayavadi. And she said, you have to read Bhagavad-Gita, Mahabharata, and Ramayana. So I found, the first thing I found was the Bhagavad-Gita in the local library. And it was this abridged version. It was really,
Local means where?
This was in New Zealand.
Okay, thanks.
And so most of the purports were missing.
Ah.
There was the verse and translation was there, but there was hardly any purports.
And how did you like it?
I got halfway through that one. I liked it. I didn't find any fault with the Bhagavad-Gita because I've been studying social work, and then every time you learn a theory, you learn what's right about it and what's wrong about it. But in the Bhagavad-Gita, I couldn't find anything wrong.
Oh, wow. Cool. That's great.
I was not an editor. I wasn't going to pick up any mistakes. And when I got halfway through, then the local temple gave me the full version.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. I'll go on. Our Krishna consciousness movement is genuine, historically authorized, natural, and transcendental due to its being based on Bhagavad-Gita as it is. It is gradually becoming the most popular movement in the entire world, especially amongst the younger generation, who are now the older generation. It is becoming more and more interesting to the older generation also. Older gentlemen are becoming interested, so much so that the fathers and grandfathers of my disciples are encouraging us by becoming life members of our great society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. In Los Angeles, many fathers and mothers used to come to see me to express their feelings of gratitude for my leading the Krishna consciousness movement throughout the entire world. Some of them said that it is greatly fortunate for the Americans that I have started the Krishna consciousness movement in America. But actually, the original father of this movement is Lord Krishna himself, since it was started a very long time ago, but is coming down to human society by disciplic succession. If I have any credit in this connection, it does not belong to me personally, but it is due to my eternal spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrakacharya Astotar Sata Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada. So, who can tell me something that they saw in this paragraph?
Prabhupada gives all credit to his spiritual master. He doesn't take any credit.
Right, yes. And this is the way of parampara. The current representative always knows that they're a representative of the entire parampara, beginning with Lord Brahma. Thanks. Oh, here he goes, same mood. If personally I have any credit in this matter, it is only that I have tried to present Bhagavad-Gita as it is, without any adulteration. Before my presentation of Bhagavad-Gita as it is, almost all the English editions of Bhagavad-Gita were introduced to fulfill someone's personal ambition. But our attempt in presenting Bhagavad-Gita as it is to present the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Our business is to present the will of Krishna, not that of any mundane speculator like the politician, philosopher, or scientist, for they have very little knowledge of Krishna, despite all their other knowledge. When Krishna says, Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru, and so on, we, unlike the so-called scholars, do not say that Krishna and his inner spirit are different. One famous Bhagavad-Gita actually said like that in the purport of that verse. When Krishna says, surrender unto me, the commentators said, it is not to Krishna to whom we must surrender, but to the unborn within Krishna. Prabhupada was very angry about that. Krishna's directly saying, surrender to me. And the man says, don't surrender to Krishna. So that's why we needed Bhagavad-Gita as it is. Krishna is absolute, and there is no difference between Krishna's name, Krishna's form, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's pastimes, and so on. This absolute position of Krishna is difficult to understand for any person who is not a devotee of Krishna in the system of parampara, disciplic succession. Generally, the so-called scholars, politicians, philosophers, and swamis, without perfect knowledge of Krishna, try to banish or kill Krishna when writing commentary on Bhagavad-Gita. Such unauthorized commentary upon Bhagavad-Gita is known as Mayavadi Bhashya, and Lord Chaitanya has warned us about these unauthorized men. Lord Chaitanya clearly says that anyone who tries to understand Bhagavad-Gita from the Mayavadi point of view will commit a great blunder. The result of such a blunder will be that the misguided student of Bhagavad-Gita will certainly be bewildered on the path of spiritual guidance and will not be able to go back home, back to Godhead. Would somebody else like to read a paragraph with it using the other microphone?
Our only purpose is to present this Bhagavad-Gita as it is, in order to guide the conditioned student to the once in a day of Brahman, or every 8 billion?
Trillion.
8 trillion, 600 billion years. Its purpose is stated in Bhagavad-Gita, and we have to accept it as it is. Otherwise, there's no point in trying to understand the Bhagavad-Gita and its speaker, Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna first spoke Bhagavad-Gita to the sun gods some hundreds of millions of years ago. We have to accept this fact and thus understand the historical significance of Bhagavad-Gita without misinterpretation on the authority of Krishna. To interpret Bhagavad-Gita without any reference to the will of Krishna is the greatest offense. In order to save oneself from this offense, one has to understand the Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as he was directly understood by Arjuna, Lord Krishna's first disciple. Such understanding of Bhagavad-Gita is really profitable and authorized for the welfare of human society in fulfilling the mission of life.
Thank you. I think it was billion. When I went back and looked. So who can say what was some main point in this paragraph? Nandaji. Can
Srila Prabhupada was pointing out how if you follow the Mayavadi understanding, you miss the whole point of Krishna's presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is, and commit a great blunder. And that's a really interesting point that Prabhupada repeatedly smashes us with. That there's such a difference, there's such a misguided understanding when people come to the conclusion that there's nothing at the end of life. There's nothing. Right. They miss out on that flavor of eternal servitorship, which is what? Unlimited and ever expanding.
Right. And full of variety.
And full of variety.
Even if they think there's something at the end of life, if they think it's the great, wonderful, white oneness, which is actually a great relief after being in the material world, suffering birth and death and all kinds of false notions of happiness. But as we were hearing somewhere just the other night, if you had a whole ocean of the happiness that you get from Brahmananda, the merging into Lord Krishna's effulgence, a whole ocean of that kind of happiness not even compares to one drop. Not even one drop of the nectar of the ocean of devotion to Krishna. So even the, brand new bhakta, just doing a little service, and there was one story of Prabhupada, I think it was in Montreal. No, was it the temple from which the 3 couples that were going to go to England? Was that Montreal? There was a bowling alley that became a temple. Okay. So there was it became Janmashtami and Vyaspuj, so everybody was asked to speak something to glorify Srila Prabhupada. It was his appearance day. And one boy had just come to the temple like the day before, and he was engaged in rolling chapatis. And they called him out of the kitchen when it was time, because everyone should make an offering. And he said, I really don't know the philosophy very well, and I'm just meeting you for the first time, Srila Prabhupada, but I am so happy rolling chapatis that if that's all I had to do for the rest of my life, I would be perfectly happy. So this is the taste of devotional service. It's personal, and it's satisfying, and it engages our active senses and even our mind in so many varieties of ways. So anyway, now we can go on. Would one of the men like to read a paragraph if they have a microphone? Oh.
The Krishna consciousness movement is essential in human society, for it offers the highest perfection of life. How this is so is explained fully in Bhagavad-Gita. Unfortunately, modern anglers have taken advantage of Bhagavad-Gita to push forward their demoniac propensities and mislead people regarding right understanding of the simple principles of life. Everyone should know how God or Krishna is great, and everyone should know the factual position of the living entities. Everyone should know that the living entity is eternally a servant, and that unless one serves Krishna, one has to serve illusion in different varieties of the three modes of material nature, and thus wander perpetually within the cycle of birth and death. Even the so-called liberated Mayavadi speculator has to undergo this process. This knowledge constitutes a great science, and each and every living being has to hear it for his own interest.
Hare Krishna. So what should everyone know?
God is great.
And what should everyone know in relation to the living entity? Exactly, that we are servants of God, that God is great, that we are eternally His servant, and just like the hand that can do so many things when it's attached to the rest of the body, if somehow it becomes cut off, the hand can't do anything. So our natural relation is we're part and parcel of Krishna, and we're meant to serve Him as the whole body. If we don't serve Him, it's true, we will serve complete illusion, because the soul is by nature, it's active. The body may become limited in our old age or with illness. We may not be able to move about and do very much. I remember quite early on in my Krishna consciousness, a friend of mine took ill, and she really couldn't do much at all, but she had an antique picture frame she found somewhere, thrift shop probably, that it had an external part and then two little pins that held the picture itself in its own frame. And she had Radha and Krishna, a picture of them on a swing, and she was lying in bed and swinging them back and forth. You know, and so you can't do much at all, but still you can have your consciousness in Krishna and do some little service, and He sees the heart. So, thank you. So people in general, especially in this age of Kali, are enamored by the external energy of Krishna, and they wrongly think that by advancement of material comforts, every man will be happy. They have no knowledge that the material or external nature is very strong, for everyone is strongly bound by the stringent laws of material nature. A living entity is happily the part and parcel of the Lord, and thus his natural function is to render immediate service to the Lord. By the spell of illusion, one tries to be happy by serving his personal sense gratification in different forms, which will never make him happy. Instead of satisfying his own personal material senses, he has to satisfy the senses of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of life. The Lord wants this, and He demands it. One has to understand this central point of Bhagavad-Gita. Our Krishna consciousness movement is teaching the whole world this central point. And because we are not polluting the theme of Bhagavad-Gita as it is, anyone seriously interested in deriving benefit by studying the Bhagavad-Gita must take help from the Krishna consciousness movement for practical understanding of Bhagavad-Gita under the direct guidance of the Lord. We hope, therefore, that people will derive the greatest benefit by studying Bhagavad-Gita as it is, as we have presented it here. And if even one man becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, we shall consider our attempt a success. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, 12 May 1971, in Sydney, Australia. So, yeah. So just imagine, Prabhupada had traveled to America in 1965. 6 years later, he's finally able to publish Bhagavad-Gita with all the translations, transliterations, word for word, and purport, just as all his other books that have already come out. Started a society that's all over the world, which now, of course, is in many more temples all over the world and in so many languages. And now I think many more African languages are coming every year. Because, as we read, every person should know who is Krishna. This is what the human life is for. So I'm more accustomed to being in discussion groups on Bhagavad Gita, so I would really like it if whoever brave soul would like to volunteer a favorite verse, or their first contact with Bhagavad Gita, or sometime when a Bhagavad Gita verse spoke to them. Something like that. And we can go from there. And if nobody, okay, Harinam, Chintamani. Where's the microphone? Make sure it's on.
Hare Krishna. So I read the Science of Self-Realization first, but when I came to Bhagavad-Gita, I even remember the exact place that I was sitting in my room and trying to understand, and I couldn't go beyond the point because I was thinking, how can God want someone to fight and kill people? I just couldn't understand it. I come from a vegetarian family for generations, so that concept is even more, like to kill any living entity,
Right.
let alone a human being.
Right.
And that to Krishna, God is supposed to be, very kind and sweet. And so I just never got behind the point. But when I met the devotees, then I started listening to the classes, and then I began to understand that, as Prabhupada said, that we need a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got a teacher, then I understood it.
Oh, that's a very important point. That the importance of the spiritual master. I mean, it's Prabhupada, the teacher, who's representing a line of teachers, presenting it. And one of my favorite anecdotes that I've read about Srila Prabhupada's translating is he was in Honolulu, and he often would go there to write because the weather was nice, so he could be undisturbed. The temple wasn't too political, at least at that time. And so he was using a dictating machine that counted in digits. So one morning, one of the devotees asked Srila Prabhupada, how many digits did you do last night? And he said, I can translate very quickly, but it takes great concentration. How to present it for the common man. So, Prabhupada knew these scriptures since before his childhood. I mean, he was sent by Krishna, but the importance of presenting it. So, I mean, what did he do? He sent his disciples out into parking lots, grocery stores, concerts. This is how the movement began. Actually, the first person who gave me Bhagavad-Gita was he's a godbrother, actually, but he wasn't at the time. He was Gilbert, had long hair down to here, Mexican heritage. And this was I was in San Jose, and he was there. But he told me, I found out years later, I got to thank him. He told me that he was actually in the group of people that was at the airport in San Francisco when Prabhupada first came from New York to San Francisco. So it was, a full hippie milieu. But Prabhupada had tried and tried and tried within India to get people to support him in his preaching. And he got a couple of followers, especially, was it Jansi, the League of Devotees? He had one man who worked the job but helped him sometimes. And he would meet people that had many sons. He would say, you have so many sons, just give me one to train and become a brahmana. But no one was interested. But when he came to the West, he found people who had grown up with the materialistic things that people in India were still wanting then, and they were tired of it. They were sick of it. And so it was a ripe field. But it wasn't that he had gentlemen and ladies to work with. He had what Krishna gave him. But he could see so much deeper than the external modes of nature. He was looking and seeing, oh, this is a soul, and I can pull the love out from that soul. And actually, I remember when I first got Bhagavad-Gita, people that know me know I don't fast very well at all. But my memory is, my impression is that for 3 days I didn't eat and I didn't sleep. I was just reading this book. Never did it again. But it made such an impression on me. And I remember saying to one of my friends, it was a verse, but I had read it, but I didn't remember it exactly. And I just said, I just want to be where the love is that's still around when everything in this world is destroyed. So maybe a scholar will be able to name the verse because it's something about the spiritual world. Yet there is another nature. Some scholar. And the translation? May give him the mic. Can we?
No, please.
Okay, so what's the verse?
You look up it. I can't remember the exact. I haven't studied like that.
What
I just
chapter? Parastas. Okay, we'll find it. Yet there is another nature. The index is of the first and third lines, so that was helpful that you knew the first line. And you knew the whole verse. LMNOP. 820. Yeah, let's find it and see if that's the very one I was thinking of. Yes, exactly. Yet there is another unmanifest nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. So that's where we want to go. And it's from Bhagavad-Gita we get to understand so much how we are the soul that animates the body. Our bodies are different, they go through changes, they're different from one another, but it's also different within our lifetime. Coming here, Nanda and I started by a flight from Orlando Airport, and His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj happened to be on the same flight. And so he recognized Nanda because she used to be the temple president in Alachua. So they're sort of chatting as we walked to the gate. And then when we got to where we were to wait, Nanda couldn't find her bead bag. She must have left it in security. So she, of course, you need your bead bag. So she went off down the hall. Maharaj is sitting, there's a seat between us, and then he looks at me very politely and says, "And may I know your name?" And I said, "Maharaj, when I tell you my name, you'll know." Because I had done typing for him like 20 years ago. I said, "Vegavati." And he said, oh. And I said, "Well, I've gained weight, I cut my hair, and I've got glasses." Changing bodies. So then he remembered, because I'm Prabhupada's disciple, but I'm also Satsrup for second initiation. So, you were Satsrup Maharaj's secretary, you did some typing for me. And I'm like, yes. I knew he would remember, but he couldn't even tell it was me, because the body changes just between a few years, what to speak of our childhood. But, the whole science is here. Dehinosmin yata dehe. First there's a little boy or girl, they grow to be a youth, and they're in full flower of their young adulthood, and everyone thinks, oh, I'm king or queen of the world, and the world is my oyster, and then, without realizing what you're doing, suddenly you're, oh, I can hardly get up, and can you help me, like that. Actually, there's a devotee by the name of Charu. He and his wife do preaching in Utah, in the U.S. They've been for years and years. And he used to do, I don't know if they still do a radio show, but I heard a couple times recordings of the radio show. So one was this changing body display. It's a diorama of the pictures. Maybe we have the pictures somewhere in here. So you can help me find it. But the picture just shows the little baby body, boyhood, and playing with a stick. And so they had a diorama that was, so right in the very beginning.
Plate number 2.
Oh, very important plate, right after all the parampara. Yeah, changing bodies. So this, he and his wife were doing preaching in like a mall setting or something like that. We're just ordinary people were walking by. It was big enough to say, sit on this table, and you could see and he was telling some of the comments that people made. And one was that he saw a woman speaking to her like teenage daughter. So it went from childhood over here to old age over there, and they're standing from that side looking, and she said, the trick, my dear, is to stay to the left as far as possible. Good luck. Good luck with that. You could get facelifts and all these things, but the actual trick is to learn to age gracefully by realizing that you're a soul. We're servants of Krishna. Everybody else is too. We're meant to serve Krishna with love, which means at least treat everyone else with respect, even the ant. What was that? Prabhupada had one servant. He was very nervous to be in Prabhupada. He'd never been in Prabhupada's personal presence alone. And this day, it just so happened, Prabhupada's normal servant went out, this young man was here, and Prabhupada said, you see that ant? I don't remember who it was, if you reckon, but he said he looked and he didn't see an ant, but Prabhupada kept saying, do you see that ant? And so he said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada said, our business is to chant Hare Krishna to him and give him some prasadam. Then he understood. And then all his nervousness fell away because he realized Prabhupada just saw everyone, even the little ant, as a spirit soul, and just wanted to give him opportunities to love Krishna and serve Krishna. Give him prasadam, So, anybody else want to tell their, yes, where's the microphone? Yeah, just there.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, first time when I got the Bhagavad-Gita was many years ago. The devotee gave me the Bhagavad-Gita, and when I opened the book, was one sloka I remember very well. Later I remembered, at that time I didn't know, but the translation was in Sanskrit. I remember up to now because I got to learn. It was just amazing. It says, Matras Pasyastu Kamteya Shipashna Sukha Dukaya. For me, it was just amazing information. I can never believe this was the nature of happiness and distress, and it was just such amazing information there. I was very much impressed, and plus when I keep open the Bhagavad-Gita in another place, the fragrance from the Bhagavad-Gita was a special fragrance. I never ever perceived that kind of fragrance in my life.
Wow.
I thought, what is this? And I asked the devotee, and he says, no, it's just the Gita is like that. The Gita is like that. But it was so special, the fragrance. It wasn't from this world. At that time, I can really see, no, it's not, because I never ever had that perception of that fragrance.
Nice.
And then after the devotee says, come to the temple, okay. But then I went to the temple the very next day, and the Bhagavad-Gita, he showed me another one, but the Bhagavad-Gita was on the shelf from the temple. And I saw the Bhagavad-Gita was just without cover, just like that.
Mhm.
No, not a special cover, but I just want to do something to that Bhagavad-Gita. I asked the devotee, can I put some cover? I need to put
Oh.
some nice cover. I says, yes, you can put. Then I went to the shop. I choose which special beautiful paper I can buy with the plastic, nice cover, very beautiful. And then I came back to the temple and I did the covering to the Bhagavad-Gita, and after I became very satisfied. But it was just amazing. But the devotee, after he gave me some encouragement, and he told me, oh, you did service for Krishna. He told
Right,
me, you did
exactly.
service. And then, how do you feel? He asked me. I feel very satisfied. I said, this is what we feel when we do service, he told me.
Hare Krishna.
And since that time, I just keep going to the temple and do something. But it was just amazing. I can never forget that from the Bhagavad-Gita. It was just amazing.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And where was that? Where were you?
I was in South America, in Peru.
Peru.
It was about maybe 1977, more or less. Srila Prabhupada still wasn't the planet. Because even the devotee told me, Prabhupada, the author of this book, is coming. In a few months is coming. Then we need to wait here.
Hare Krishna.
And we were waiting, but
Right.
almost to the whole year, but unfortunately not Srila
Right.
Prabhupada. But also presence of Srila Prabhupada was very much felt in that place, even though he wasn't there. He
Right.
never visited Peru, South America actually. He went only certain places in South America, but he never went to Peru.
Mhm.
But we felt his presence, Prabhupada's presence was very much felt there in that place.
Right, right.
It's amazing, but this is the thing, Bhagavad
Thank
Gita
you.
is just amazing.
That's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Even the fragrance,
Yeah.
the otherworldly fragrance, just from seeing the book, somehow Krishna put. Thank you. Anyone else want to volunteer an experience with a?
When I was 18 years old, they also gave me 3 books. One of them
Louder, please. I'm
One
sorry.
of them was Bhagavad-Gita. But years passed and I had Bhagavad-Gita in my library. And I finished university and used to work as professor of theology. And it was part when we discussed about comparative religion. So I said, finally I have to read the books which I had. So I took the Bhagavad-Gita and I started to read it, and it was amazing. It began in the afternoon, and until next morning I read it, which was never happened
Right.
that for that short period. And I found finally the answers for all questions which I couldn't find in theology university. So I said to myself, you know what, you have to change your life completely.
Mhm.
And reading Bhagavad-Gita gave me the courage to do so.
Hare
So
Krishna.
I'm always grateful to Srila Prabhupada and Bhagavad-Gita, which he helped to give me the opportunity to follow him in this way.
Nice. And that was in Croatia?
Yes, in Croatia.
Ah, just see. Hare Krishna. Nanda.
So I'll share my story also. So I was in Massachusetts in the USA, and I was in college, supposedly. Sorry. I wasn't a very good student. But anyway, I was in college, and I had 2 other roommates. And one of my roommates was a very wealthy lady from a wealthy family. She was very popular. She was with the in crowd. And I was a country bumpkin and didn't know anything about anything. So one day she said to me, oh, I'm going to a class on Bhagavad-Gita. Do you want to come? And I said, Bhagavad-Gita, what's that? And she said, I don't know. It's just some book. Just some book. But I thought, oh, if she's going and she's popular and everything, then it must be something good. And I should go because then I'll be with the in crowd as opposed to not in the in crowd. So anyway, I went to, it was in a university, it was in the dormitory. It wasn't an official class, it was a devotee had come from a temple 2 hours away and was doing his own little preaching program there. And so I was in a dormitory and I went to the class on Bhagavad-Gita and did not understand anything. Didn't understand that it was a book on philosophy, didn't understand that there was a movement, didn't understand anything. But he chanted Hare Krishna, and that was attractive to me.
Oh,
And
nice.
so I somehow or other started chanting Hare Krishna, and I went regularly to those classes and still did not understand anything.
Amazing.
But I liked to chant. So finally when Christmas break came, that was my first chance to visit the temple. And that whole experience of just visiting the temple and having chanted a little bit just pulled me right in. So it's not directly Bhagavad-Gita, but it's
No,
directly
no.
Bhagavad-Gita.
It's because Prabhupada
Yeah.
put the Bhagavad-Gita, well,
And just
Go
another
ahead.
little aside, when I was in college, I was very active in my own way in the women's rights movement. Sisterhood is powerful. And so I had read two paperback books about sisterhood is powerful. So then I was like telling people and giving classes on sisterhood is powerful, even though I didn't really know much about that either. But so when my women's liber friends found out that I was getting interested in Hare Krishna books, they said, ew, do you know what they say about women in these books? And I said, I don't care. It's a really good book.
actually, that's something like what,
I just want to bring that actually.
oh, go ahead.
Indirectly regarding Bhagavad-Gita was quite strong in my life. And there was a time I really was praying hard for getting a spiritual master. I had some difficulty on my husband and he didn't want me to get involved, but I was really praying so much. And then one day, a friend that was giving program in his house on Saturday, so we come to our house, there is a sannyasi coming and he's giving a class on Bhagavad-Gita, and then you can come. I used to go to the Krishna temple since many years. So I went there, and it was January, it was dark, it was fog, very dark, very winter time. And this sannyasi came and he started to give the class on Bhagavad-Gita. Usually, there was no blackboard, there was not, and no one has the book. He just read the verse. And while he was reading the verse and the devotee was translating, the light completely went off, and it was so dark we couldn't see not even the person next to us. So we were about 50 of us in the room, and the translator said, "I go and see what's happened." Some blackout, and then he, in the dark, he said, "You know English? You translate for Maharaj." So I was in the dark, and I started to translate the Bhagavad-Gita class. And he went on for about 20 minutes, like that.
Oh, Maharaj kept speaking in the dark,
Maharaj
and you were
kept speaking,
translating.
And I was just translating. And then I was just in the dark. Then after 20 minutes, the line came back. And
Right.
I realized I was the only one with the sari and the tilak also, because it was just a Saturday afternoon for friends of Krishna. So Maharaj said, "Come and sit here, please continue translation." So I sat there, and it was my first translation but I was translating at the time the BTG, so I knew a bit the terms. So I started to translate the Bhagavad-Gita, and after that he asked me, "Can you sit next in the table during dinner, so at least you can help me to speak with the people?" Yeah.
And what language were you translating?
Italian.
This was in Italy.
Yes, and then and again after he made the slideshow, and after he became my guru. Became my guru. After I started to write to him, and my first approach, it was like a blackout on Bhagavad-Gita. And all the things that happened that day, it was that I was the verse was 2:11, and Guru Maharaj asked to the public, "Anyone can repeat the verse?" And I was thinking, how can anyone repeat the verse that there is no blackboard and everyone has the book? And then one person in the public start to repeat the verse, and then his wife, and then another one, and another one, 4 of them.
During the blackout.
And I was really quite, I was thinking, how can they know the verse? I don't even know a verse. Now I go back, I must study this verse, I must start to study verse. Then in the evening I meet people and I say, oh, congratulations, you can recite slokas.
Right.
And you say, well, we just met on Thursday, 2 days ago, all 4 of us in our town, and we said, let's learn one verse of Bhagavad-Gita.
And that was the one they chose.
And since 211 is considered the first memorizing verse of the Bhagavad-Gita, so we just learned that. And by chance, was the first time that we go to a place where someone asks us to read and it's not written, so Krishna is encouraging.
Totally, totally. Thank you. What a beautiful story.
Very mystical.
Yes, yes. Krishna is the master of all mysticism.
My husband was a mystic.
Sweet.
He died in Vrindavan.
Oh,
and
just
and they allowed me to get initiation.
right. Good. Yeah. No, that was beautiful. Nobody on this side has shared anything. Yes, something. Trouble in the back. Blue light.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Well, I was in London.
Okay.
And I don't know, it may have been heard, but my son, who was 15 at the time, he was on Oxford Street, just the main shopping road in London, and they gave him an invitation card to the lunch program at the London Shore Temple, Surrey Street Temple. And so he gave it to me, because he knew I was looking for something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had this little card, and I didn't know what it was about, to be honest. I think it had Hare Krishna mantra on it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was an invitation to a lunch program, free feast and all that. So I was working actually quite nearby, and I carried this invitation card with me for about 6 months.
Krishna.
Just fascinated by it for some reason. And I don't know if it said it was a Bhagavad-Gita class or anyway. So after about 6 months, I plucked up the courage to go to the temple. Because, it's suit and tie, briefcase.
Right.
Accountant type, it was completely the wrong thing to do. And so I went one Saturday, and there was one devotee there, Raghunath, actually, he was American, but he now lives in England.
Okay.
And he was giving the class on Bhagavad-Gita. And I've been attending some other sort of like meditation groups and things.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, the thing I remember about the class, he said, if you want to come to the human platform of life, you have to follow these 4 regulative principles: no eating meat, no fish or eggs, and no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling.
Right.
I thought, wow, that's fantastic, because in this other meditation group, they weren't following such high standards.
Right.
So that really impressed me.
Right.
So on the first day, there was one young devotee, quite a young devotee, who sort of like looked after me and took me up to the bookshop. And I said, yeah, I like books. So I said, but there's so many, which one? So he gave me a Bhagavad-Gita. And I started reading it. And actually it just started ringing bells. Everything made sense. There was only one thing that didn't make sense to me. I couldn't understand.
What was that?
But everything else was, this really sort of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that on practically every page, it seemed to me anyway, the author is saying, actually, all you need to do is chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama.
I thought, it can't be that simple. It just can't be that simple. So anyway, I took my family on holiday to some Spanish island, Tenerife, and I just took the Bhagavad-Gita with me, and I just read the whole thing while we were on holiday. It was had a swimming pool on the top of the block of flats that we were staying in. And I was just reading there, having a swim and reading. And that was my first experience of Bhagavad-Gita. It really seemed like I had. It was coming back. It was. I'd had some contact in maybe some previous life.
Right.
I'd never actually heard of it before.
Right.
But it was just that one thing which I'm still struggling with. That we just have to chant.
Right. Well, I think a lot of us are theoretically we can agree, but when it comes to chanting with the proper proportion of love and devotion and no mental platform, I think most of us are struggling with that still. Thank you very much. Anyone else have a Bhagavad Gita or coming to Krishna experience? It's actually 6 o'clock. They announced this morning that the class will be from 5 to 6, and I actually thought that's the time frame.
Well, last night
we went. Yashoda Mai.
It always goes a lot longer. So
it was.
A lot longer
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Well, let's see if I thought of something while you were talking. Oh yeah, when I first after I met this long-haired person, Gilbert, who gave me several books. He gave me Krishna book and Bhagavad-Gita, which he had me type some pages from Bhagavad-Gita as if they were for a purpose. And he confessed to me later it was just so that I would read them. But so I'd been chanting and offering my food and reading these books for a few months. I think I started in, say, November, and then it became my birthday, which is in February. And I had moved from the east coast of the U.S. to the west coast. So it was my birthday, and my father called me up. And he said, wish me happy birthday. Is there something that you want? And of all the 4 girls in our family, I was the youngest, and I was the one that was the most materialistic. And I sat there, and I couldn't think of anything that I wanted. And he, are you sure? He had to ask me a couple times, and then finally I go, oh, actually, there is one thing. I said, if I send you a book, would you read it? And he said, what's the book? And I said, Bhagavad-Gita. And he had been born in India. His parents were Christian missionaries. And so he said, oh, my dear, I've read so many Bhagavad-Gitas. I said, but this one's different. It says it was intended by the speaker himself. And he's like, oh, my dear, the person who wrote, he didn't think speak, wrote the Bhagavad-Gita has been dead, lo, these many years. But I sent him the book, and years later when I went to visit, he kept it nicely on his shelf. And Prabhupada says, even if you keep the book nicely on your shelf, you make so much advancement. And of course, I gave him prasadam and Charanamrita. And when the Prabhupada, Planting the Seed was the first volume that came out of the Prabhupada Lilamrita. And at that time, I was living in the temple, and I didn't have any money of my own, but we were engaged in painting sales. It was an era in the 80s. I think many temples around the world, that's how they raised money. So there was like a service person who was passing through the mall we were set up in, and he was stopping to talk, and he wanted to help, but he didn't have anybody to give the painting to. And then he said, do you like these paintings? And yeah. He goes, do you have any? And I go, no. So he bought a painting and he gave it to me. So then he walked away, and I thought, So I put it back up for sale, and when I sold it, it was $80. So then I got 4 copies of the Planting the Seed, and I gave to my father and each of my 3 sisters. So all the family people got to read about Prabhupada. And Yeah, I know he may not have read Bhagavad-Gita, but he definitely read Planting the Seed, and everybody got a favorable impression from that. So you just never know what Krishna has in store. We're all so very fortunate. So we're just beginning Bhagavad-Gita again. Tomorrow Nanda will start on just part of, not even the whole introduction, because it's quite long also, and then we'll get into verse by verse by verse. But it's so nice, and I feel very grateful to all of you for just lending an active ear to hearing the glories of Bhagavad Gita and how Prabhupada has changed all of our lives so much, inconceivably. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.